What's up everyone? Welcome back to Drive District. Want your engine to last 2 or even 3 times longer? In this video, I'm going to share 7 key habits that can dramatically extend your engine's lifespan. If you want to squeeze every possible mile out of your engine and avoid expensive repairs, make sure you stick around until the end. Let's get started. First, let's settle one of the oldest debates in the automotive world. Should you warm up your engine or not? My answer is yes, but you need to do it the right way. Start the engine, put on your favorite music, fasten your seatbelt, and by the time 20 to 30 seconds have passed, you're ready to drive, even if it's minus 40 degrees outside. The key is to drive away gently. Keep the engine below 2000 to 2500 revolutions per minute until the temperature gauge reaches roughly 40 degrees Celsius. This is the fastest and healthiest way to warm up your engine. More importantly, it's also the quickest way to warm up the engine oil. As the oil reaches operating temperature, it flows more easily, and the oil pump can maintain higher pressure throughout the lubrication system. That's what really matters. The dashboard temperature gauge only tells you the coolant temperature. It doesn't tell you when the engine's internal components are properly lubricated. In reality, the cylinder block and many internal engine parts warm up differently than the coolant does. That's why gentle driving during warm-up is one of the easiest ways to reduce engine wear. Another question I get all the time is, what engine oil do you recommend? The truth is, engine oil is one of the biggest factors in determining how long your engine will last. Choose wisely and your engine can feel almost indestructible. Here's something many people don't realize. Worldwide, there are only about 10 major companies producing base oils and only 4 major manufacturers that produce the additive packages mixed into modern engine oils. So what should you do? First, look at which oil brands are actually available in your region. Pick a reputable brand. Then, make sure you're buying the real product, not a counterfeit. Don't hesitate to ask the seller for documentation proving the oil's authenticity. Next, check your owner's manual or use one of the many online oil recommendation tools. Some are universal, while others are provided directly by the vehicle manufacturer. If you compare several of them, you'll almost always end up with the same recommendation. One specification you should never ignore is the ACEA rating. Once you know your engine's recommended viscosity and the correct ACEA specification, buy your oil only from a trusted supplier. And here's one final tip. If your engine allows more than one viscosity grade, I generally recommend 5W30. And if you drive a gasoline-powered car without a catalytic converter, choose a full SAPS engine oil whenever possible. Look for oils that meet ACEAA 3/B4 or ACEAA 5/B5 specifications. If you drive a diesel equipped with a diesel particulate filter, DPF, or a gasoline car with a catalytic converter, then a mid-SAPS oil is the better choice. And if your gasoline engine runs on LPG or CNG, I'd recommend either a high-quality mid-SAPS oil or a premium fully synthetic oil based on PAO and ester technology. Yes, those oils cost more, but in the long run, they're worth every penny. Now let's talk about something that has an even bigger impact on engine life than the oil itself: oil change intervals. And here's where I'm going to ask you to forget almost everything your owner's manual says. The maintenance intervals recommended by the manufacturer are designed to get the engine comfortably through the warranty period, not necessarily to maximize its lifespan. Think about it. Most warranties last somewhere between 100,000 and 150,000 kilometers, or roughly 3 to 5 years. Almost any modern engine can survive that long, even if you change the oil every 30,000 kilometers. Will it cease? Probably not. But it will almost certainly start consuming oil much sooner than it should. Remember what many manufacturers were saying back in the early 2000s? They claimed that burning 800 milliliters to 1 liter of oil per 1,000 kilometers was considered normal, and therefore not covered under warranty. Convenient, isn't it? The funny thing is, an engine that burns oil rarely fails from lack of lubrication. Why? Because the owner is constantly topping it off with fresh oil. So the engine survives, the warranty expires, and the manufacturer never has to pay for a replacement. That's exactly why I recommend shortening your oil change intervals. So what should those intervals actually be? Today, we have plenty of laboratory oil analysis data that gives us a much clearer picture. No matter how premium the oil is, by around 7,500 kilometers, it's already lost a significant portion of its protective properties. Oxidation increases, the additive package becomes depleted, the oil simply isn't what it was when it came out of the bottle. Changing the oil every 10,000 kilometers can still be perfectly safe, but mainly if the car spends most of its life cruising on the highway. City driving is a completely different story. If your engine spends every morning idling in traffic and every evening doing exactly the same thing, then 7,500 kilometers should really be your upper limit. One of the first signs that you're waiting too long between oil changes is increasing oil consumption. Another is the appearance of dark varnish deposits inside the engine. You can often spot them just by removing the oil filler cap and looking inside. One interesting fact though, diesel engines generally tolerate aging oil a little better than gasoline engines.
Diesel engines have one important advantage.
Their piston rings are generally larger, which helps them dissipate heat more effectively and makes them less prone to carbon buildup. Diesels also operate at lower combustion temperatures than gasoline engines, so you rarely see the varnish deposits that commonly form on the non-wearing internal surfaces of a gasoline engine. That said, once diesel oil becomes severely degraded, it breaks down very quickly and turns into thick sludge. The exception is true PAO-based synthetic oil. A genuine PAO synthetic can easily handle 10,000 kilometers because it's far more stable under heat and oxidation. Here's something most people don't know. About 95% of the motor oils on the market today aren't actually synthetic. They're made from highly refined mineral base oils. They're excellent products, but they're not chemically synthesized in the way many people imagine. Now let's move on. For the past 15 years or so, modern gasoline engines have been running hotter than ever. In heavy traffic, it's completely normal for the engine control unit to keep the coolant temperature at 100 degrees Celsius or even higher. Why? To improve emissions. And the improvement is tiny, maybe 1 or 2%. But the downside is much bigger. Higher operating temperatures accelerate oil degradation, shorten the life of rubber seals, and encourage deposits to form inside the engine. Those deposits reduce cooling efficiency, which only makes the problem worse. That's why cleaning your cooling system is so important. After every winter, wash the main radiator thoroughly. If you live in a dusty climate, inspect the cooling stack again around mid-summer. Check the engine radiator, the air conditioning condenser, and the intercooler if your vehicle has one. The entire cooling pack should be as clean as possible, so air can flow freely through it. If possible, consider installing a lower temperature thermostat. And if your engine uses an electronically controlled thermostat, a well-written ECU calibration that opens it slightly earlier can also help reduce thermal stress. Now let's talk about maintenance items. Spark plugs. Filters. These are things you should never cheap out on. The price difference between a quality filter and a poor one is usually small. The difference in engine protection can be enormous. Some engines are actually capable of crushing or even tearing apart a low-quality oil filter. Needless to say, that's not doing your engine any favors. The air filter is just as important. Many people forget about it, but depending on your driving conditions, it should generally be replaced every 10,000 to 20,000 kilometers. If you own a diesel, the fuel filter deserves the same attention. Replacing it every 10,000 to 20,000 kilometers is inexpensive insurance for your fuel system. And finally, don't ignore your spark plugs. Replace them according to the interval specified by the manufacturer. It's one of the simplest ways to keep your engine running efficiently for years to come. The reason is simple. Worn spark plugs can cause misfires. When the air-fuel mixture doesn't burn inside the cylinder, it can ignite later inside the exhaust system, right next to the catalytic converter. And you probably already know where that can lead. Scored cylinder walls. That's why you should always choose high-quality spark plugs. Many manufacturers even offer online spark plug lookup tools. Just enter your vehicle information, find the correct part number, and you can order the exact plugs your engine was designed to use. Now let's talk about fuel quality. This is absolutely critical. Poor quality diesel fuel can destroy your injectors. In the worst-case scenario, an injector nozzle can seize in the open position. Instead of delivering a fine spray, it continuously dumps fuel into the cylinder. That concentrated fuel stream can actually melt part of the piston and even damage the cylinder wall. Needless to say, that's usually the end of the engine. Gasoline engines aren't immune either. Bad fuel can ruin injectors, trigger detonation, and eventually destroy the pistons. No matter what you drive, your fuel should always be clean, high quality, and have the correct octane or cetane rating for your engine. So where should you buy it? Stick to busy, reputable gas stations with high fuel turnover. Fresh fuel is almost always better fuel. And if you're really serious about maintenance, don't be afraid to ask for the station's fuel quality certificate. Every batch of fuel is supposed to have one. Now let's move on to emissions equipment. I'm talking about AdBlue, catalytic converters, and EGR valves. We won't spend much time on AdBlue today because, by itself, it doesn't reduce engine life. The biggest inconvenience is that if you ignore the warning long enough, the engine may eventually refuse to start until the system is repaired. Now let's focus on the catalytic converter. If your catalytic converter melts down or begins to break apart, your engine is in serious trouble. Tiny ceramic particles can be drawn back into the cylinders. Once the pistons grind those particles against the cylinder walls, scoring is almost inevitable. So why does a catalytic converter fail in the first place? There are several common causes. An incorrect air-fuel mixture, the wrong engine oil, leaking fuel injectors, or simply mechanical damage caused by vibration or impact. But here's the good news. If your engine is healthy, and it stays healthy thanks to proper maintenance, quality oil, and good fuel, a catalytic converter can easily last 300,000 to 400,000 kilometers before the engine computer finally reports that its efficiency has dropped. Notice what that means. Its efficiency gradually decreases over time. It doesn't necessarily melt, and it certainly doesn't have to fall apart. Now let's talk about the EGR system. Despite what you may have heard, EGR itself hasn't destroyed engines. Not gasoline engines, not diesel engines. The biggest downside is the buildup of carbon deposits inside the intake manifold. That's why, on diesel engines, I recommend cleaning the intake manifold roughly every 150,000 kilometers to remove all that soot and carbon buildup. While you're in there, it's also a good opportunity to inspect or service the intake swell flaps if your engine has them. Gasoline direct injection engines can develop similar deposits as well, but here's the important point. No piston or cylinder has ever been damaged simply because the engine had an EGR system. Now, if you decide to remove or disable the EGR on a modern engine, remember that it's much more than just unbolting a valve. The engine control software has to be recalibrated properly. The ECU needs to stop controlling the valve, disable all of its feedback systems, and the fuel maps usually need to be adjusted as well. The key is making sure it's done correctly. One thing to keep in mind is that disabling the EGR will slightly increase combustion temperatures. That said, I'm not going to make a bigger issue out of it than it really is. In practice, modern engines generally operate just fine with the EGR system professionally disabled and correctly calibrated. So those are my tips for today. Follow them, and I'm confident your engine will reward you with many more years and many more miles of reliable service. If you're passionate about cars, engines, transmissions, and everything that keeps them running, make sure to subscribe to Drive District. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.